Welcome to the What Really Happened radio show. Because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, March 3rd, 2016, getting toward the end of the week. Sure, happy it's Thursday. Sure, happy it's Thursday. Sure, happy it's Thursday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. Tom is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. The Lady Claire will be joining us tomorrow in our third hour, as usual. And let's just start with the campaign for the White House, because a new factor has been brought in. Mitt Romney is back, and he wants to get his mitts on Hillary, or some such nonsense. And it was kind of interesting. They trotted him out. The I Hate Donald Trump Network, used to be called Fox News, now it's the I Hate Donald Trump Network, just gave Mitt Romney all the time he wanted to come on out there and scream about all the times that Donald Trump has stumbled and fallen, as if you're only supposed to be successful all the time, that you never make mistakes. That's just not real world. And if you look at all the things Donald Trump has accomplished, he's out there trying. Remember what Theodore Roosevelt said about the arena? The person who's out there trying bravely and willing to risk failing, that's the person who deserves the applause. Mitt Romney, of course, is out there. He's securing his fortune that he made buying companies, firing people, plundering the companies for their assets, and selling it all off. That's how he made his money. So Mitt Romney is out there trying to convince America that Donald Trump is a fraud. This coming from the candidate who back in 2012 was caught repeatedly photoshopping pictures of his campaign rallies to make the crowds look bigger. And they weren't even quality Photoshop jobs. They were incredibly obvious. Now, we reprised a video when Mitt Romney came to town. I urge you, if you have not seen it, watch this thing and start now sending it around to everybody that you know. Because there are already rumblings that where Marco Rubio has failed to unseat Donald Trump, the GOP leadership, which is determined to prove that they and not you are in charge of the Republican process, are going to throw him in some way or another. So get that video when Mitt Romney came to town. Send it to all of the people that you know. Now, we ran a poll at WhatReallyHappened.com. Has Mitt Romney changed your view of Donald Trump? And as of the last time I looked at it, 70% said their opinion of Trump was higher because of Mitt Romney's attack. 1% said their opinion of Trump was lower. And 29% said their opinion of Trump was basically unchanged. Who the heck listens to Mitt Romney anyway about anything? So we're hearing all these rumblings and rumors about Romney is going to declare for the presidency. And here's where it gets kind of interesting. Romney cannot participate in the primaries and caucuses. He cannot be voted the nominee by the Republican voters. Of course, they don't want your input anyway. That's the whole point of this exercise. Between the Republican brokered convention and the Democrat superdelegates, the message is clear. What you want isn't a factor any longer. We will tell you who the candidate is, and if you are a loyal party member, you will support the party's candidate. So they may be looking at trying to force Romney as the candidate in a brokered convention, which is going to be difficult because he doesn't have any delegates. And I think if the GOP leadership were that blatant to take somebody who didn't even go through the debates, didn't go through the caucuses, didn't go through the primaries, and tell all the Republican voters, this is your guy, that probably would be the end of the Republican Party. Nobody is going to stay signed up for a party that has that kind of a tyrannical, dictatorial attitude of, don't think for yourself, we will give you the candidates. Go back and read your Constitution. That's not how it's supposed to work. We the people. What part of those three words are you not getting? We the people choose our own leaders. And if we're not allowed to choose our leaders, then the contract is null and void. And we're under no obligation to obey this government, this pretend government. We're under no obligation to pay its out-of-control bills and debt, and we're certainly under no obligation to sacrifice the life and limb of our children in this pretend government's wars of conquest. Now, there's another possibility. remember when Donald Trump first came on in and he was talking about, if he didn't get the nomination, that he was going to run an independent campaign. And the GOP leadership made a big deal about getting him to sign a document saying that if he didn't win the nomination, he promised he was not going to run an independent campaign. Now the GOP leadership is out there saying that if Trump gets the nomination through the delegates, they're going to mount an independent campaign. And obviously Mitt Romney is going to be their star that they're going to run. Now, it's an uphill battle, because if the GOP leadership steps out and forms an independent run, they're not considered Republicans any longer. They don't get their candidate on the ballots in the 50 states automatically. So there's going to be a very expensive petition drive to try and get Mitt Romney on the general election ballot for November in all 50 states. That's been a major stumbling block that has prevented an independent candidate from winning the presidency. And if they were able to actually pull it off, it's the end of the Republican and Democratic duopoly. So there's an upside there. But here's what's going on. A Romney third-party run is likely to split the GOP vote and hand the White House to Hillary Clinton, which apparently the GOP leadership is perfectly willing to do to stop Trump. I think your rank-and-file Republicans have to be feeling a tremendous sense of betrayal right now, a tremendous sense of anger that the party leadership does not really represent what the rank and file of the party are all about. And it's supposed to be representative all the way from the bottom to the top. Everybody in that line is supposed to be taking their marching orders from the people underneath them. That's what makes it a republic. That's what makes it a democracy. Now, we're seeing all these articles around here from Patriot Rising as good example. Neoconservatism, rest in peace. Trump is writing the obituary. And that is really a big part of the opposition to Donald Trump. He is a speed bump in the war agenda of the neocons. He's not going to play along with all of this. Michael Huckabee is out there saying that the Trump phenomenon is a peaceful overthrow of the government, which is actually true. Elections are abstracted, symbolic revolution to keep the government changing, hopefully in line with the interests of the American people. Obviously, the party apparatchiks in the GOP and the Democratic Party have a completely different idea. They want to be in control. They're running around the media displaying this attitude that they know what's best for the country, and you, American people, you're just dumb, stupid morons. You have no idea. These issues are too important to be left up to you. That's why we must step in and decide for you who the leaders will be. Meanwhile, we're getting word from Capitol Hill. Congress is starting to come to grips with the reality that Donald Trump is probably going to be the Republican nominee, barring the unexpected, and he could actually win. There are numerous polls now that are matching up between Hillary and Trump is going to win, barring the unexpected. So right now, the Republicans, according to this article in End of the American Dream, the GOP establishment, meaning the GOP hijackers, the elites who hijack the Republican Party to their own purposes and to heck with what Republican voters want. They've got 4 options to try and stop Trump. None of them are good. Number 1 on the list is Marco Rubio, who is starting to fade very rapidly in the polls, especially since that drug scandal came out in Florida, and there is, unfortunately, in the GOP, a lot of people who are having problems with his sexuality in his youth, which I don't agree with. I don't really think it's a factor. But the corruption, yeah. When we come back, the rest of the list. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're talking about this 4-step plan by the GOP hijackers. They're not the establishment. They're a bunch of elites who have hijacked the GOP party machine to their own purposes. And the GOP voters are waking up about it, and they're very angry. So they had a 4-step plan. Plan number 1 was Marco Rubio. Get Marco Rubio in there and take the nomination away from Donald Trump, or at least take away enough delegates to force a brokered convention. Plan number 2 was Mitt Romney. who's making all this noise, and apparently the Las Vegas odds makers are saying, yeah, he's going to declare. He's going to enter the race. And they're going to try and force him on the Republican voters at the convention, and then turn around and say, look, we ignored you, we kicked out the guy you wanted, like they did Ron Paul in 2008 and 2012, but we expect that you will support the candidate we have chosen for you. That probably is not going to work. Step number 3 is an independent campaign, which is going to have serious roadblocks with getting him on the ballot at all in all 50 states by November. And finally, step number 4, deliberately throw the campaign to Hillary. And have you seen how many of these GOP, I am God and you are scum leaders are out there saying, I would rather see Hillary Clinton in the White House than Donald Trump. And unfortunately, there is a 5th option this article doesn't mention, which is why I hope Donald Trump is wearing his Kevlar undies. Now, what's really interesting, with all this talk about Romney stepping on in, you ought to read the comments being put on his Facebook page. And let's see, go home, Mitt, who cares? We want someone who's for America and her citizens, not someone who's politically correct. Another comment, you disgusted me today. Well-played scheme between you and the RNC, ultimately trying to hand this election to Rubio. That will not work. And it just goes on and on like that. People are very angry. Republican voters are very, very angry that they are being treated like this by their party leadership, who expects them to send in donations and vote for the party's candidate. And the GOP voters are very, very angry about that, just like Sanders supporters are very angry at the way their nominating process is being stolen for Hillary. The party machines are on full display now. In fact, here's an image that's circulating around the net right now. Somebody just sent it to me. Message to Mitt Romney. I have been a lifelong Republican. I voted for you. I understand that you intend to address the nation tomorrow night. This is before the speech that he just made. Be cautious. If you intend to try and calm the waters, fine. I'm in your amen corner. If you intend to attempt to circumvent or head off at the pass the direction of the will of the people by joining in an effort to stop Trump, I and millions of Americans will oppose you and the GOP establishment, which until very recently I thought to be a myth. Understand this. I will support any current GOP candidate who wins fairly and squarely. If the nomination is stolen from Trump, I will join him in a new party. Don't tread on me. Huge amounts of anger. This skullduggery on the part of the party leadership could trigger an actual armed rebellion in this country. Because we have gone along with all of the nonsense coming down out of Washington, D.C. and Wall Street on this myth that we somehow voted for all of this because we elected these people to office. And now we're finding out, no, it didn't happen. Long before you march into a polling place, the candidates are shuffled around so that only candidates who serve the wealthy elite, the money junkies, Israel, the military-industrial complex. Every election, every 4 years, it's a repeat of voting for the lesser of two evils. And friends, the lesser of two evils is still evil. And it's a stupid way to run a country, and it has got to stop. All right, we're going to grab some phone calls here. Chris in Massachusetts, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Aloha. I used to be a lifelong liberal Democrat my whole life here from Massachusetts, but I'm so sick of these people stealing this stuff. And yesterday you were talking about how Secretary of State Galvin said 20,000 people left the Democrats. They did. People are getting pissed off.
Yeah, and, absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, if Trump is driven out of the GOP party and he winds up...
We're gonna riot, baby.
Well, no, I'm saying he could literally draw people from both the Democratic and Republican voting polls. He could actually do it. He's got enough money to mount the petition drives to get on the ballot in all 50 states by November. I'm going to go out and get people to sign petitions here in Hawaii to get them on the ballot.
I don't know how we don't stop them taking them out. But there's one more thing I wanted to say.
Before you go any further, when if they assassinate Donald Trump, that will start a bloody revolution.
Oh, I don't want that to happen.
I don't want it to happen either. But unfortunately, if they're stupid enough to do that, if they're stupid enough to fully put on display that we, the American people, don't matter in the running of this country anymore, why should we go on doing what we're told? Why should we go on paying all of these huge tax bills and all this interest to the private central bank? And why should we sacrifice one more of our children in these wars of conquest? You give me a good reason.
You got it right, Mike. And these rats are running away. He's scaring them away. Donald's win will scare them all away, whether he wins or loses.
Well, they're already scared. They're feeling cornered. And if you've ever done any hunting, a cornered animal is the most dangerous.
Oh, exactly. It's so scary. So, all right. Well, thanks for the call.
You said something about Paul Craig Roberts.
On the line there, Mike.
What?
Take care, brother.
Okay, I will.
Take care.
Thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Steve in Massachusetts. Steve, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. What we are witnessing now is possibly history in the making. All our lives we were told that Democratic versus Republicans, we had a choice. Now it's all been exposed as being a farce. When you see the Republicans going after Trump and the Democrats going after Trump, something's wrong. He's a person for the people, and it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican.
Well, what it comes down to is we're all Americans, okay? And there is a contract between we, the American people, and the government that we allow to manage our nation's sovereignty. The government is a caretaker of the nation. That's all. They don't own it. They're not the boss of it. We are. And if they're not playing by the rules, there's no reason for us to even listen to them any longer. All of these underhanded actions by the leadership of both of these so-called traditional parties has delegitimized the entire government, along with the massive election fraud in general. This is not a real legal government of this nation any longer.
It's something's really wrong when the Republicans have the person they can have, that they have Trump, who can win everything without any.
But he's not one of them. He's not one of the chosen.
Exactly.
It's the same thing they did to Ron Paul. It's a repeat of that whole situation. We got to take a break for commercials. Thank you very much for the phone call, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And apparently, earlier today, Mitt Romney's Facebook page did, in fact, say he is currently running for President of the United States of America. The screen capture of that was circulated all over social media. People piled onto Mitt Romney's Facebook page and just excoriated him. And at this point, they've changed the page and removed the reference that he's running for the president. But you should read the comments there. That just anger and pure venom. How dare you come on in and try and steal the contest away from the candidate we, the people, want. We sat still for it when it was done to Ron Paul. Third time's the charm. 3 strikes and you are out. And this is the third strike. Trying to get rid of the candidate the people want and put in another corporate puppet. Andrea Tantaros is unloading on Mitt Romney, saying you can take it and you can shove it. That caller was right. This is an historic time. We could see the 2 traditional parties and their duopoly shattered. The neocons are going to be shattered. We're going to wrest this country back from all these money junkies and war hawks and Israel firsters, and we're going to return it to being a nation of the people, the American people, by the American people, for the American people. Because that's what it's supposed to be. And if the government does not want to comply with the contract, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, the honorable thing for them to do is to resign and find some useful work somewhere. And if they won't abide by the contract and they won't resign, it is the right of the people to alter and abolish it. It comes right out of the Declaration of Independence. And yes, I'm angry. We're all angry. They're literally rubbing our noses in this steaming pile of bovine excrement that they have hijacked control of the country away from us, and they don't think there's a thing we can do about it. All right, let's grab some phone calls here while I try and lower my blood pressure. Randy in Texas, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, a big Texas howdy to you, Mike. I was calling up about Mitten's little speech. Yeah, he was sitting there talking bad about Trump, and he brought up the fact that, well, if he puts a 35% tariff on products coming into the United States, that it's going to cause our jobs to go overseas. And it's like, no, he was specifically talking about Carrier Corporation moving their plant down to Mexico, and he was talking about putting a 35% tariff on the units coming across the border to try to get our jobs back.
Yeah, that's exactly the right thing to do. You know, right up until now, the U.S. tax code was written to encourage American corporations to take their manufacturing to other countries and then sell the products back here into the United States for a higher profit. And every candidate for the last few elections was saying, well, we're going to fix it. They never did. And like I said, the reason Trump scares the heck out of the current establishment is he's got his own money. He doesn't owe anybody anything. He's not taking corporate donations. He's taking personal individual donations. You can go to his website and click the donate button. But he can't be bought. He can't be owned. And that is a big reason why people are responding to Donald Trump. And he's a plain talker, and you may not agree with some of what he says. I certainly don't. But you know it is his honest opinion, because he's not a career politician. He's not a person whose entire career is lying constantly to people.
That's one of the reasons why I'm behind him.
Yes.
You know, he tells exactly how he feels. It's not opinion poll driven.
I mean, I don't agree with him on the immigration issue to the extent that he's doing it. Okay? But the fact that he's stuck with it, despite the opinion polls, that says a lot about the man. Oh, yes, it does. But you were talking about bovine excrement earlier. Yes.
I mean, when you get somebody like Mittens, which is my pet nickname for him, because he's kind of like a stray cat that comes up in your yard and begs for food, you know, except he's begging for
actually, he's a vulture. That's how he made his money. Mitt Romney doesn't build hotels, he doesn't build casinos, he doesn't build anything. He goes in and buys other people's companies, fires everybody, and sells off the assets, and then he moves on to the next one. That's how Mitt Romney made his fortune. You have to watch that video when Mitt Romney came to town, and you have to send it to everybody that you know. This is a call to Rivero's Rangers. Don't wait for orders. Grab your MP3 flash drive and ride toward the sounds of argument.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, one thing is that Trump actually looks like he's really getting into this. I mean, it's the thrill of the game, I guess.
Well, I mean, he's winning. He's winning. He knows he's got the American people on his side. And let's be honest, this is a man who does have a very, very large ego, and this has got to be a heck of a rush for him. But he's the standard bearer now for the Republican Party. Regardless of what the party elites want to believe, Trump is carrying the banner for the Republican voters of America right now.
Yeah, and the one thing that I really enjoy seeing is the Republican establishment sitting there going into full panic mode.
And the Democratic establishment.
Oh, yes, that too.
Yeah.
Hillary does not want to run against Donald Trump. Not when he's going to sit there and bring out all of her dirty laundry right in his speeches.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Hillary was trying to replay Richard Nixon's re-election campaign to sabotage Republican candidates so that she could run against the one she could beat most easily. And it didn't work. She's going to be head-to-head with Donald Trump, and the polls are showing she is going to lose.
Yeah, and it looks like Ted Cruz is getting ready to bow out, and we had Ben Carson bow out. Rubio.
Well, I mean, Cruz has to bow out. He's not a natural-born citizen. Rubio has been hit with this drug money laundering scandal. Carson never really had a chance. With all of these other people bowing out, Trump is going to get all the delegates he needs to lock in the nomination at the convention.
Yeah, well, at least we can hope. But they're trying their damnedest right now.
Yeah, and they're playing dirt. I mean, there's an article somebody just put up here saying point blank, Donald Trump will be assassinated before he can start a revolution. And I guarantee there are people who are thinking about it. And I really do hope that his professional security, which is operating inside the Secret Service, is really doing their job. Because, yeah, it's a real possibility. When you go up against the Federal Reserve, you get shot at. When you go up against the Clintons, you get shot at. Trump, you have to admire his courage. He's not a dummy. He knows he's risking his life doing this.
I'll tell you what, I'm sure that Donald Trump clanks when he walks because he's got a pair like steel.
He absolutely does, and they've been polished through years and years in the business community.
Yeah, and Mittens was sitting there talking about how bad of a businessman Donald Trump is. Well, he inherited $200 million. He started out with a $1 million loan from his dad.
Yes.
He didn't get the $200 million until after his dad died, at which point in time Trump was already a billionaire.
Well, it's like I said before, nobody succeeds 100% of the time. The fact is Trump got out there and he built things. Mitt Romney made his fortune tearing things apart other people had built before him. We got to take a break for commercials. We got a bunch of phone calls. In fact, the lines are completely loaded right now. Thank you, Randy. We're going to let you go, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Oh, hi, America. Welcome back to the show here. I'm getting all these texts and tweets and emails of just people are just furious at this idea of the GOP so-called leadership. Trying to say, you don't want Trump. You want Mitt Romney. You really want Mitt Romney. Watch the watch. Watch the watch. You want Mitt Romney. Got an email from somebody who's up in Boston saying Mitt Romney was behind that whole Big Dig project, which was an absolute disaster. They're still paying for that. And I'm looking at all of this anger and rage on Mitt Romney's Facebook page. Over the last weekend, they were showing Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein on cable. It's a very, very funny movie, one of his best and classics. And I keep flashing back to that scene with the police officer on the front steps of the building. He goes, "A riot is an ugly thing, and I think it's just about time that we had one." And that's the tone that I'm hearing from all these emails and conversations. All right, let's try and clear up some of these phone calls here. Scott in Texas, what's on your mind?
Well, I think what's really the big picture is, and the reason everybody's coming out, Democrat and Republican, trying to slam Donald Trump is because if he does get elected and will indict Hillary, which he says he will, and he will, she will roll over on 80% of Washington, and they all have to go to jail, too, and they are scared to death. That's why this whole thing is just turned into just one big freak show on them versus the people, and the people are winning, and they are scared to death, and I love it.
You are absolutely right here. I mean, Hillary, we're getting all these third-hand reports that Hillary is out there saying that if she is not made the president, she will tear down the entire government. She'll go public on Vince Foster's murder and what was going on with all the government-sanctioned drug running down in Arkansas, and she'll blow the whistle on the fact that, yes, the U.S. government was arming and supplying ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and she's literally said if she doesn't get to be the president, she's going to tear it all down. Frankly, I think Hillary's at greater risk of intercepting a bullet than Donald Trump right now.
Well, that was my next. I was just fixing to go there because now once Donald gets a little bit further down the road, she's going to be like getting that flak jacket on because they're going to be all coming after her next. They're like, oh, yeah, you're going to roll over? Yeah, well, but, see, she's got all kinds of memoirs and tapes and stuff.
Yeah, she learned a lesson from Vince Foster about proper care and feeding of a dead man switch. You know, that's something people at that level always have. Vince Foster's mistake was that his dead man switch was in his White House office safe. That's why as soon as they got notified about the body, they got a Pentagon special team in there to crack open the safe and went through all of his papers. If Vince Foster had had his dead man switch at an outside undisclosed location, he'd probably still be alive today.
Well, you know, Larry Nichols, he's all over him, so he's got his box of goodies in case he was to get Arkansas-ed, and so it's just everybody that comes out that is slamming Trump, you can see they are just a bad worm that have bit into the apple, and they are just as tainted. They're corrupt, and the harder they defend or the harder that they go against Trump is probably the more corrupt they are. And so with that, I'll leave you to it.
All right. Thank you very much here, and we're going to switch over here to Rick in New York. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I'm one of those angry Republican voters that is
good for you.
But I'm pessimistic, Mike. It always seems like, Mike, in the end, they still get the guy. And that's what scares me, is that this guy, since Trump became a serious candidate, okay, the CIA false flag, Muslim attacks are going to have to stop. The Dow is near 17,000. These are the issues that gets Americans want this guy. They're sick and tired of politics. And that's why I'm pessimistic, Mike. It's because how much longer can they let this guy get stronger before they do something? It's just too much.
Yeah, but again, because the American people are now aware of how these things are really doing. I mean, we were all brainwashed in school to think of our government as a bunch of really swell guys who are worried about our lives, and now we see them for what they really are, a bunch of corrupt, sociopathic, backstabbing opportunists who are only out for their own good. And we now know, yes, John F. Kennedy was assassinated because he was a threat to the system. Same thing with Lincoln, same thing with the attempt on Andrew Jackson. And we now see it. The American people are literally aware that Trump is risking his life, taking a stand against the Fed and against Hillary Clinton. And if something does happen like that, you know, it could trigger a revolution. I don't want to see that happen. But if it does, I'm not going to get in the way. I'm not going to try and stop it. You know, a rage long in building is long in cooling. And, you know, I've been involved in this stuff for over 20 years. In fact, we're coming up, I think, on the 22nd birthday of the website. You know, this is 1/3 of my life. This whole thing has been taken up ever since the Clintons ruined my career in Hollywood over the Vince Foster case. And so, you know, it's finally coming full circle.
Yeah. Well, again, Mike, thank you for everything you've done, and I'm proud to say I'm a listener, and I try to tell as many people as I can, and I do hope for all our sake that Trump does get far because, like I said, history has shown most people don't make it. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, but you know something? History also shows that every dictatorship and tyranny sooner or later takes one step too far, and that's when the people bolt, and they turn on the rulers. You can ask King Charles I, Mussolini, Ceausescu, Louis XVI. It does happen, and it could happen here. I still think that in the long run, we're going to see the U.S. government collapse the way the former Soviet Union did. This could be the beginning of it right now. Because what happened in the Soviet Union, because of the samizdat, the Soviet people all of a sudden learned what a bunch of lying crooks their government really was. Today, because of the independent media and the Internet, the American people are realizing what a bunch of self-serving lying crooks their political leaders are. That's the beginning of the downfall. When the American people stop listening to the government, when they stop believing in the government has to fall. And that's where we are right now. Thanks a lot for the phone call.
Thank you.
We're going to switch over to Mo in Florida. Aloha, Mo. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. I'm mad as hell, and I can't take it anymore.
Good for you.
God, I got to say, I'm just seeing this everywhere. You know, everybody is just like up in arms with this. I think if they misjudge it this bad, it's amazing because they just stirred a hornet's nest. These people don't want the status quo. They don't want, like you say, politicians. They want something new. They want somebody thinking outside the box. But I guess I was going to ask you this. Just I'll try to be quick. I know you got a lot of callers. I know Andrew Napolitano was on Fox News today. I happened to catch it, and he was saying how Hillary's aide got granted immunity. And in order to do that, of course, a federal judge has to issue that, has to allow that to happen. And he's talked about them convening a grand jury. So, I mean, isn't this pretty much all over?
I'm going to talk about that in the next hour because I want to go into it in depth. I am not convinced this government is going to do the right thing. I think it's a dog and pony show, and when we get to the end of April, we're going to have the Department of Justice and the FBI stand up and say, we looked really, really hard, but we couldn't find anything. I have waited 22 years for anybody in the government to do the right thing, and if it hasn't happened by now, it's not going to.
Can we get the Genovese and the Gambini families, the Bushes and the Clintons, to turn on each other?
That would probably be a really good strategy. But again, Hillary is in a position to blackmail the entire government, and that's why we're seeing all these GOP leaders saying, "Let her have the White House," because if she doesn't get the White House, she's going to burn everybody in the current government.
Oh, God, the Clintons know where the skeletons are buried. God,
they know how they got to be skeletons. That's the interesting thing. All right, we're going to let you go here. We're coming up on our top of the hour commercials and news break. I got 2 callers. I'm going to ask you to please wait patiently. Peter in California, I know you've been waiting for almost 20 minutes, but I'm going to have to ask you to wait for another 7 or 8, and then we will get back to you and talk about all this stuff. GOP strategist Castellanos is saying it is time to rally around Trump. It's too late to ask Mommy to step in and rewrite the rules to let the chosen anointed candidates steal the election. And apparently, Rupert Murdoch is now out there saying, yeah, it's time to get real and understand Trump is going to be the Republican Party nominee, and it's time to rally around that, or Hillary Clinton will be the next president of the United States. So we're going to take a break for top of the hour news and commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645, and we're going to go right to Peter in California, who's been waiting very patiently a half hour. Thank you for being so patient. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Michael. Thank you. You remember back, I know we're the same age, Michael, back in the fall of the Berlin Wall.
You have my deepest sympathies.
Yeah, there was a guy named Francis Fukuyama, Harvard, Yale, Cornell political science professor, who came up and coined the term the end of history, which when liberal democracy, with the fall of the wall, was the final triumph of Western liberal democracy. And what we're seeing right today, which kind of crystallizes it, is the end of history of liberal democracy. What is going on right now is that, and it's naked for everybody to see now, no matter what. The superdelegates on the Democratic side, the fact that Bernie Sanders is a tepid, if not even phony candidate, and then we have this ridiculous stuff with Trump, and it basically is saying that the people who run the country, the 1%, and the people who carry out their will in government, which is the entire government, will not honor the people's wishes.
No, from their point of view, we're just a livestock. We're a herd of livestock, human capital animals. We're just walking wallets and breeders of the next generation of workers and soldiers. That's it. They literally see us as their property.
Yeah, there's no way for any intelligent person to come to any other conclusion at this point.
No.
I mean, today we just had Chertoff and all the people who really run the country, the banks, the Federal Reserve, the military-industrial complex, Israel and the Jewish lobby, all the people who really run, all these people are now coming out, the neocons, the warmongers, and they are, despite their Republican affiliation and their supposedly commitment to quote democracy, they're coming out and disparaging what is clearly the people's choice is Trump, and they will not accept it. They won't accept it.
No, they won't. And what they're showing basically is, Republican and Democrat is just a label you put on to be on one side of this little artificial, false duopoly, false dichotomy. And, they're putting it on display that they have no respect for the American people. They've got no respect for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They've got They think they should be running it all. That's what apparently liberal democracy was all about. The elites will run everything because they're so much smarter than the rest of us, except they keep on proving that they aren't. But this could be the beginning of a tremendous backlash back to paleocon values. And I'll tell you, I would not be surprised before the end of the primary season to see some people start to smash those electronic voting machines. After all the skullduggery we saw in Iowa and New Hampshire, and people down in Texas are still furious at those electronic machines that were switching the votes from Trump to Rubio. They're absolutely furious about that right now.
Well, this is the day, Michael, March 3rd, 2016, when with Mitt Romney's with the approval and the encouragement of the Republican apparatus coming out and disparaging their own candidate because they don't like what he stands for, even though the people do. This is the watershed day right here. This is the beginning of the end. So.
Well, everybody listening to the show, you got to go on out and you got to make that point to everybody. There's a lot of Americans who are still desperately clinging to their beliefs that we are a democracy and we are a republic. And you say, no, you take a look at what's going on here. This clique, this little group of socias. Remember when you were in high school, you know, that little crowd of rich kids who always got away with everything and they had all the money? That's what our government is, except they've got nuclear weapons now and they can print their own money.
It's horrible, Mike. But anyways, I know you got a lot of callers. So keep up the God's work, man. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Jeff in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Fine.
I just want to say, I always say this, I've called a few times. I just want to say I respect you so much because you tell the truth and you're an honest dealer. And every time I call, I always want to say that I love your show for that reason. You just give the information and it's true. Now, I want to talk about Mitt Romney. I want to apologize for everyone because even though I'm a Canadian, what happens in the United States affects Canada very much. And yes. I did support Mitt Romney in 2012, and I want to publicly apologize for that right now because he's a phony.
Okay, your penance is 10 Bloody Marys and 5 Hello Dollies.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to do it.
No, that's enough. You know, I'm ordained in the state of California. I can actually hand out your penance. That's it. Okay.
Thanks, Michael. I honestly, just because I was so offended with Obamacare and all that, and it wasn't a black thing because they like to use racism all the time and they don't agree with things, and I thought that was very disingenuous. And I still to this day find Obamacare a disaster. And we have healthcare here, but. You know, if you go broke or bankrupt, you still have to pay, and that's not the same thing as what we got here. So it's, you know, what I'm trying to say.
Well, let me step in here for a little bit, and I'll tell you what happened both in the United States and Canada. When the United States was started, the government was made up of people who had other jobs. Ben Franklin was a publisher and an inventor. Paul Revere was a silversmith. John Hancock sold insurance. George Washington had a plantation. He made whiskey. Same thing with Thomas Jefferson. These were people who knew how to run businesses, and they made a business-like government. But over time...
They also had no idea of being like a career politician. That didn't exist back then. It was just like...
No, it didn't. No, being in the government was a part-time honorarium. And the rest of the time, you survived on your own business efforts. And Thomas Jefferson, like Trump, succeeded sometimes and he failed sometimes. Okay, but now we have allowed to grow in our midst this permanent ruling class of hereditary politicians who, by and large, for the most part, with precious rare exception, they don't actually know anything about anything other than politics. And so they're setting themselves up to manage and control everything about American life, which they don't know how it works. And that's why all of these programs, whether it's Obamacare or FDA or the rest of it, why they're so badly done is because people who actually know how to make things happen are not allowed in government. And that's also another factor. Regarding Donald Trump, this is a guy who, like the Founding Fathers, knows how to run a business, knows how to build things and set things up, and it's going to underscore the incompetence of our career professional politician class.
Well, on that point, I've listened to your show for the last 2 months every day, and you've compared the establishment, rightly so, with the mafia.
Yes.
And they are. So Mitt Romney is a mafia man. And Donald Trump is not. He's an outsider who has his own voice, and they are, it's a family show, scared crapless about him because he's upsetting the crookedness of everything. And he's telling it, he tells it, you always bring up Bobby Kennedy, and they do have similarities, like Bobby got shot, and I remember, I was too young for that, but my aunt always brings it up all the time, because she was watching television. It's very early in the morning, like 1 o'clock in the morning when it was on there, and she's only 9 years old, and she had to wake my mom up, who was about 8 years older than her, and say, "Oh, Kennedy got shot." And my mom's like, "Oh, that happened like 5 years ago." And she's like, "No, it happened now." And she
this is the other Kennedy. They're running out of Kennedys.
Right, but Bobby Kennedy got shot because this is what might happen to Trump, and I think he's not stupid. And I think that you're right. He's relying on his own public security, his own private security, because what does the Secret Service do? Because they're the attachment on the mafia. They're like the sons of the mafia, like Kennedy and Dallas.
Well, remember, the Secret Service stood down in Dallas, Texas. We've got it on film. Anyway, listen, I got to let you go, Jeff. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. I'm looking at the I Hate Donald Trump network over here. It used to be called Fox News, and they've got the banner headline at the bottom, Romney versus Trump. That's it right there. Yes, we're going to shove Mitt Romney down your throat and up your, whether you like it or not, is what they're saying. Now, as you know, they're having a debate tonight. I don't even know if Mitt Romney is going to just all of a sudden show up. But it's already stacked against Donald Trump, because in tonight's Fox News debate, 400 of the tickets went to top GOP officials who want Trump gone. Only 50 tickets were left for the general public. They're loading the audience with Trump bashers. And you know that everybody's just going to be piling on Trump. Going to get the moderators out there saying, Donald, have you stopped beating your wife? Or whatever it is they're going to do. They're after him. Now then, interesting story coming out of Breitbart. They've obtained an audio recording that was made up in Massachusetts at his campaign manager in a private meeting with high-dollar donors, not Massachusetts, Manhattan. And Breitbart News got it, and basically the campaign manager laid out Marco Rubio's plan is to force a brokered convention and steal the nomination away from Donald Trump. All of these people are un-American. All of these people are wannabe tyrants and dictators. They're there to sell out the country, to sell out the election, to sell out the votes, to put more money in their pocket. That's it. That's what they're there for. The curse of all political power is that it attracts the very sort of people who should never be allowed to have it. Now, Rubio may not get his wish. The governor of Florida is coming out endorsing Donald Trump. And apparently over at Fox News, I mentioned earlier, Rupert Murdoch is saying it's time to acknowledge Trump's going to be the nominee. Let's work with him. Fox News head honcho Roger Ailes said they're not going to support Marco Rubio anymore because of his poor performance on Super Tuesday. We're already hearing people saying it's time for Rubio to just go ahead and drop on out. And this is going to be a major complication. Rubio is falling. Cruz is facing 6 lawsuits over his eligibility to be president of the United States of America. One of them goes to court tomorrow. And the law is clear and unequivocal. Ted Cruz is not allowed to be president. And under the 12th Amendment, he can't be vice president. Trump may lock up the nomination before the convention, no matter what lies Mitt Romney dishes out. Mitt Romney can't go into the convention with delegates. He's not in the primaries and caucuses. Unless they shoot Donald Trump and say, oh, gee whiz, well, we've got Mitt Romney for you. He's the backup. National Review is calling on Rubio to drop out of the race. And so's Ted Cruz. But again, Ted Cruz cannot be president He doesn't meet the constitutional requirement of being a natural-born U.S. citizen. He was born in Canada of parents who were Canadian citizens at the time. They'd renounced their Cuban and American citizenships. And what angers me about the Ted Cruz campaign is the same thing that's angering me about all of these people, the party elites, the self-appointed guardians of America's greatness and glory. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about the Bill of Rights. They don't care about you. They just serve their own imperishable, everlasting glory and honor and their place in the history books. And we, the American people, need to develop a zero-tolerance policy. If you are not complying with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, you're not a legal, legitimate government. If you're not going to let we, the people, choose our own candidates to be our own leaders, then we're not obligated to do anything that you say, pay your bills, or surrender the lives of our children in your wars. After all these whoppers they've been telling. Human-caused global warming, Saddam's nuclear weapons, Assad's sarin gas. And by the way, they're trying to recycle that one right now to justify the ground invasion of Syria. Oh, yes, Assad is using terrible weapons on his own people. And yes, we lied about it before, but you can trust us this time. No, we can't, and we don't. Everything this government and corporate media says is total air, and we should not hear their words. Now, getting on over to the other side, RIMP.com has an article about how the Democrat Super Tuesday results aren't conclusive. It wasn't the knockout that Hillary Clinton hoped for. And yes, technically she won the majority of states, but by very slim margins. And this despite more allegations of election fraud, electioneering. There's a petition out there that Bill Clinton should be arrested because he was in violation of Massachusetts election law by electioneering within 150 feet of a polling place, and he did it 4 times. He should be in jail. Now, speaking of jail, we're hearing a lot of rumors, and at this point, I stress it is rumors only. Stu Webb is claiming that he has received information from U.S. intelligence sources that Hillary's aide, Huma Abedin, has been indicted in this investigation. And if there's an indictment, that means that there is, in fact, a grand jury at work. Now, supposedly, the indictment has been sealed, but we're being promised it will be made public in the next 30 days. Maybe. One significant development that has made it to the news. Remember Brian Pagliano? He was the Hillary Clinton staffer who set up the private email server in her home back in 2009. And he has been granted immunity by the Department of Justice. Now, this does 2 things. First of all, he can say whatever was going on without fear of going to jail. But most importantly, he can't invoke the Fifth Amendment. He has to answer the questions truthfully, or he can go to jail for perjury. And he has to answer all questions. If he refuses, he can go to jail for contempt of court. Now, Judge Napolitano is out there doing his little happy dance and saying the FBI is ready to indict Hillary over the emails. Now, I got to tell you, I'm getting sick and tired of all the promises and reassuring rumors. Either indict her or not, and get it over with so we can start warming the tar and plucking the chickens. I still think this is a dog and pony show. So the FBI and Department of Justice can say, we really looked hard, but we couldn't find a shred of evidence. More about that when we come back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show. And if Mitt Romney's attempt to come on in and steal the nomination away from the people's candidate, Donald Trump, made you angry, I'm about to pour salt in the wound right now. The Washington Post is reporting that the Illinois lawsuit challenging Ted Cruz's eligibility to run for president has been thrown out of the court by Judge Maureen Ward Kirby of the Cook County Circuit Court, who is not returning any calls asking for comments. I'll bet. Cruz is not eligible to be president. If by some amazing miracle he gets elected to the White House, I'm not going to listen to him. I'm not going to obey him. I'm not going to let him send more of our children off to be killed and crippled in wars. We know what the Constitution says. I don't need some judge to do my thinking for me, especially when the judges are just as corrupt as the rest of the government. I'll decide for myself. Thank you very much. We're going to go to the phones here. DJ in Georgia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for taking the call. Just with the elections in general, at this point in the country and where we're at, the other day someone asked me who I was going to vote for, and I was trying to explain to them that, voting for any one of these candidates is kind of like taking a vitamin when you have cancer. It's like we need, with so much corruption in Washington and obviously Wall Street and the banking system and the military and other things going on, it's like there's going to be very little difference made by any one of these candidates, in my opinion. And although, by the way, I love your show and respectfully would have to disagree with you on this one matter where I do think that things will spiral out of control and, like you predicted, will crash, the economy, currency crash and so on. But I think that it's going to be engineered, and they're going to usher in a new banking system, the cashless.
Well, I know that's the plan. I know that's the plan. But part of the plan was also to blur all the populations together into one mass, and that's stumbled badly in Europe. The EU is getting ready to come apart. And so this plan for the New World Order is in serious trouble because the people of the world don't want it. We want our own nations, our own culture, our own identities. Really humanity is best served by a planet with hundreds of little tiny nations taking care of themselves and trading across the border, instead of these big, giant empires. Every time you get a super large government and a permanent ruling class that is totally ignorant about how things work in the world, you get disaster. That's what's happened across Europe. That's what's happening here in the United States of America. Now, the reason Donald Trump is so popular is not because everybody thinks he's going to be a great president. It's because he's outside the system that's been wrecking the place for 30 years.
Yeah, Mike, I would vote for Trump too. I have a feeling, though, he's going to go the way of Reagan, where he's going to basically be co-opted in, unless he's going to go the JFK route. But I think he's more of a Reagan-esque, where he's going to make some concessions with the Republicans and with the powers that be. Let's be real.
Well, let's be honest. Reagan was suffering early stage Alzheimer's, and he was easy for George Herbert Walker Bush to manipulate.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, okay.
Another point real quick. One more point real quick.
One more point.
Yes, sir. Okay, so if there is another crash or, and they issue in this new banking system or a new military or whatever, if they try to globalize everything, how do you think that a tax structure on something like that would work? Because wouldn't we at that point be having to pay taxes to a world government? What is
oh yeah, that's the plan. They're gonna add a world tax on top of all the other taxes we're already paying. And at this point, all of these things fail because all of these plans are predicated on this belief that there are still vast pools of untapped wealth out here in the pockets of the ordinary citizenry, and it isn't. Anytime they put on a new tax one place or they charge a higher price for something, the people have to choose to go without something else. The net change to the revenues, the net change to the economy and taxes remains a constant because there is not enough currency out here to have a healthy economy. Okay?
Do you think that we should reform or try to reform a system or just start a brand new one? Like, to basically go...
We're going to start a new one. The current system doesn't want to be reformed because it brings them massive unearned wealth. I mean, look at how China handled Hong Kong with very, very low taxations to this very day, and how much money Hong Kong made for itself and for China and how wealthy everybody became. Lower taxes mean more prosperity for the ordinary people. Our rulers don't want that. Our rulers are fascist. They think all the wealth should be in their pocket, and we should spend all of our lives working in servitude for their permission, for their noble granting of permission to live on their land and to till their fields and work in their factories.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks. We're going to let you go here. All right, getting on back here. So let's get on back to this whole email server thing. I'm still smelling a big, stinky FBI rat out there because I'm looking at this story that came over Fox News where the FBI is investigating whether computer passwords were shared among Hillary Clinton's aides to determine how sensitive intelligence managed to go between the classified systems and Clinton's unsecured personal server. In other words, they're going to say it was Hillary's staffers who did all this stuff. And Hillary had no idea. That's what it looks like they're setting us up to do. I would love to be proven completely wrong. But remember, the FBI has been the protectors of the Clintons and the power structure in general, going all the way back to the murder of White House Deputy Counsel Vince Foster. Anybody who is waiting for the government to do the right thing, anybody who's waiting for the corporate media to tell the truth, you're wasting your time. You are wasting your time. Make your own decisions. Think for yourself. Decide what reality is. Don't let some corporate media talking bimbo who's making millions of dollars a year think for you. Don't let some judge tell you what the government is supposed to be. You can read that Constitution. You can read that Bill of Rights, and you can decide for yourself. It says so right at the top. We the people. Not we the money junkies, not we the Israel firsters, not we the self-appointed intellectual elites. It's all of the American people. That Constitution and Bill of Rights belongs to us. How it's interpreted is up to us. I don't care what this corrupted judge over in Illinois says or does. Ted Cruz is not allowed to be president, and I am offended deeply by all of his supporters who just want what they want and don't feel the Constitution and the Bill of Rights should enter into it. The Constitution's a blankety-blank piece of paper. The issues are too important to let ordinary people make these decisions. Those are the mindsets of tyranny and dictatorship. Now, over at the San Diego Union Tribune, they just ran a poll. Who does Mitt Romney's criticism of Donald Trump help? 75% of the respondents said it helped Donald Trump. The same result we got at our poll on our website. This has backfired horribly. It's blown up in their faces. Because when you get right down to it, ordinary American people, and I'm talking to you right now listening to this show, ordinary American people have a deep instinct for fair play and honesty and doing the right thing. And when we see crooked politicians and lying corporate media trying to steal our country from us, we're going to stand up, we're going to get angry, and rightly so. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to be talking about the wars, emphasis on the plural here. I'm still seeing all over the place all this anger pouring out. This may have been the breaking point. And then to come on out and just throw out the lawsuit about Cruz's eligibility and not have an explanation on what basis did you do that, other than that you are owned, judge. At this point, we stop listening to the judges. They're just part of the costume. We're going to have these people up there in their funny-looking robes, and you just believe that they'll be honest interpreters of the law, right? Nope. No way. All right, we're going to grab a phone call here real quick. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike? Mike, I'm wondering how stupid these people can be, the establishment. If I wouldn't know better, I would think almost that Trump and Romney planned this together. I know Trump wouldn't do that, but I would almost think they planned this together. I mean, this is a big boost for he should use this for the campaign ad. These people are incredible, the establishment.
Well, see, the problem is they think we're all stupid morons. And the reason they do is because most of these people were getting their early political training back at the height of the Cold War in the 1950s and 1960s when media was one way. The rulers would tell the corporate media what to say, the corporate media would broadcast it to the American people, and there wasn't any feedback. And so the politicians got used to the idea that whatever they put out there was being believed. And now it's a very, very different world, but they're still following old habits. They could come on out and say, oh yeah, Saddam's got nuclear weapons, and Assad's got sarin gas, and humans are warming the world. And we all know it's nonsense. It's a big steaming pile of USDA choice, bovine excrement. But they're still playing the game by the rules that used to work 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's another thing, too. I mean, I see now today they had some kind of a conference accusing Russia, Iran, and Syria of war crimes, bombing hospitals and all. How stupid do they really, again, how stupid do they think we are? And I post something on Facebook. I think they're all a bunch of liars. I think the fact of the matter is Russia and even Iran and Syria are doing the good work right now. But they think we're that stupid to believe that they're committing war crimes when the fact of the matter is we armed ISIS in the first place.
Well, they may not even care if we believe it or not. They're just going through the motions of justifying the coming ground invasion of Syria. And this is the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee. They passed a resolution saying, we're going to try Assad, Russia, and Iran for war crimes in Syria. Therefore, we have the right to invade Syria and kick all of these people out. And that's their justification to start another war.
They start another war. I'm telling you right now, the army we have today, demoralized. Look what's going on with the veterans and all that, and feminized and all the other things that's going on in the military today. Do they honestly think we could defeat the Russian army in a ground war?
You remember that story we ran earlier in the week? These frontline specialist troops like the SEALs are having to spend their own money for essential gear because wherever all that money pouring into the Pentagon is going, it isn't reaching those troops on the front line. And they're having to buy their own GPS and their own helmets and their own, ancillary gear here, to fight the war with. But that's all this thing about the House Foreign Affairs Committee. They're trying to build a case where they can say, well, we are charging Assad, Russia, and Iran for war crimes, and therefore that's our reason to go on in and save those poor Syrian people from war crimes. And no, of course we don't believe it. We know the U.S. has been trying to get Assad for 5 years now, and they've used lie after lie after lie after lie, but they don't know any other way to run the government because that's all they've ever done was lie, and it gets them what they want. But they don't know any other way to run a government. So they're just going to keep on doing what they're doing until we, the people, finally get fed up and grab all these liars and throw them out of our government buildings hard enough to bounce 3 times on the concrete. And maybe then they'll start thinking that truth is a virtue.
What I really like to see also is the troops starting a mutiny. They almost did a few years ago with the so-called sarin gas that actually was probably provided by the CIA, the so-called rebels. I'd like to see the troops actually mutiny and say, no, you're not going to do this stuff. We're not going, period.
I think we already had one, on that military base where, a bunch of people got shot and then they blamed this Muslim guy. And the story that we got was that some returning troops from Iraq who thought their enlistment in the military was over and they were going to civilian life were just told, we got to send you back one more time under stop loss. And they freaked out and they pulled the trigger and that's where they went. And obviously the government doesn't want the rest of the military understanding that there's rebellion in the ranks already, so they found some convenient Muslim guy to frame for it.
I never heard. That's one I never heard. But, nothing would surprise me because, like I said, I don't see how they're going to, one of the reasons they don't want to have a draft is because they had a draft. You got 18-year-olds who would vote. On top of that, they'd riot over something like this.
Well, once the election is over, the draft is coming, and they're going to be drafting young girls as well. And see, from the point of view of the U.S. government and Wall Street and the Federal Reserve, they can't turn around on the war agenda without destroying all of these financial institutions, without setting some of these people up to be charged with war crimes over at The Hague. And that's another reason they're terrified of Trump. They know that a Trump presidency is not going to protect people in the previous administrations who committed war crimes. Donald Trump is going to say, you're fired. Get on the plane. You're going to The Hague.
Or we'll try them ourselves in this country. I'd rather see us try them in a public trial in this country. And then as far as I'm concerned, once they convict them, they should hang them up by by the lamppost closest to the courthouse in public so the public sees what happens to these traitors, for what they've done.
Well, I'll volunteer my services to the prosecution.
I would too. Absolutely.
All right. Well, listen, Mark, thank you very much for the phone call. I got to cut you off because we're coming up on the top of the hour. I got a lot of stuff to get to here. Israel is now shelling the Lebanese border. They've just hauled off and started shooting. You paid for all of it. Israel is saying, oh, we have to defeat Hezbollah. The horrible terrorists are out there. No, they're basically maintaining the southern front for the coming invasion of Syria. And we're seeing, along with that report about the House Committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, wanting to charge Assad, Russia, and Iran for war crimes, we're seeing stories like this one coming out of Investment Watchdog. The U.S. propaganda begins, U.S. concerned about Syrian government attacks on civilians. And they've played this lie before, and it fell flat on its face. But the motto of the United States government and the corporate media is a simple one. If at first you don't succeed, lie, lie again. Because if you lie to them often enough and loud enough, soon they will believe it. The big lie principle. Except in the age of the internet, the big lie principle doesn't work anymore. All of these propaganda tricks are no longer effective in the age of the internet because people know all about them. It's like when you're a magician. Once they know the secret, once they know that something funny has happened, the illusion is gone. Now, the invasion of Syria may be imminent because apparently Syria just suffered a mysterious nationwide blackout. Possibly as the result of a cyber attack, we don't really know. But Syria is all of a sudden blacked out and cut off. In fact, the ground invasion could be starting right now. And we have no way of knowing it. Iraq forces make major gains in Salahuddin. They're getting rid of more of the ISIS militants, and the U.S. is saying, no, we'll do that. We'll get rid of the ISIS militants for you. And Iraq's saying, you haven't yet. You keep getting in the way. The Prime Minister of Iraq, Haider al-Abadi, is saying that all Iraqis should join in the battle to recapture Mosul away from ISIS. And the U.S. is saying, no, we'll get Mosul for you. Really, honest. You stay at home. We'll take care of it, honest. It's all coming apart here. Up in Ukraine, Ukrainians are dying by the thousands due to the lack of modern medication. Protesters are blaming Yatsenyuk. The economy is an absolute disaster. They're in a wartime economy. There is nothing being spent on the civilian population. It's all going to the war effort. Current polls are showing 70% of the Ukrainians want Yatsenyuk out. We could see a military coup happen there. Over in Yemen, Doctors Without Borders has had to close another medical facility due to Saudi missile attacks that are near misses. There's our top of the hour commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to take some phone calls. James from Ireland. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What is on your mind?
I can't believe it actually got through to you. It only took me about 2 years, but no matter. Listen, I think I heard you saying about Cruz can't run because he's not an American-born citizen, and yet they're letting him run. Does that mean my hero, Al Schwarzenegger, can now run?
Okay, unfortunately your connection to us is breaking up, so I'm going to need you to ask that question again, but go a little bit slower so that we can hear everything. For some reason, our phone system has been acting up lately where the connection, there's dropouts. You sound like a Johnny Mathis record.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, Ted Cruz apparently can still run despite he's not an American citizen.
Well, that's what we're being told. I don't accept that.
Okay, does that mean my hero, Arnold Schwarzenegger, can now run?
Yeah. Well, see, they're trying to get Ted Cruz in there by saying that his mother was an American, even though she renounced her American citizenship and become Canadian at the time of his birth. But in the case of Arnold Schwarzenegger, born in, I think it was Austria, his parents are Austrian, but I know that when he was governor of California, they were out there saying, there's got to be some way we can get the governor in to be the White House. And if you go back and you read the Founding Fathers' writings, their goal was to never have a ruler of this country who was not of this country. That's the purpose behind all of this stuff.
Right. So if my mother was born in America, that means I could now run for presidency.
No, not unless you were born in the United States.
Well, Ted Cruz was he?
No, he was born in Canada.
So what's good for the goose should be good for the gander?
Well, it should in theory, but unfortunately the United States is a country in which the rule of law has basically been thrown into the shredder, and it's basically whatever the rich and powerful can get away with, that will be the law of the land.
Okay. The next quote I just have real quick is most of the people in America, and I know you're spreading the good news about what's happening around the world, America is not liked outside America.
Well, yeah, we all have an image of what America's supposed to be. Most of it's based on the brainwashing we got in those state-controlled schools. And it's been a very painful process over the last 20 years. And it isn't like I was really naive about the U.S. even back when Vince Foster got murdered, because I was already aware of the funny things around the John Kennedy assassination. But to be very honest, 22 years ago, I never really dreamed of just how corrupt it would be revealed when I started digging.
Yes, most certainly so.
Okay?
I have to say, the feeling for America here in Ireland has diminished so much, it's just, people here don't even want to go there on holidays anymore.
Well, we see it in our tourism numbers here, but again, how can you come here and have a relaxing vacation when you're treated like a prisoner of war going in and coming back out again? Thank you, TSA, for wrecking our economy out here in Hawaii.
Okay, Michael, I'll cut you loose and let you get on with your brilliant show.
All right, thank you very much here. We're going to switch to Terry in California. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, if I was in that poll, I'd say my opinion of Trump didn't change, but my opinion of Mitt Romney went way down.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely backflashing on him big time, but you know, the I Hate Donald Trump network is still on out there saying, really, you should be thinking about Mitt Romney, you know, because, you know, he only lost in 2012, and they want him to lose again. Because, again, Hillary Clinton, we are hearing, has literally put out a message. If she is denied the White House, she will rip the lid off of everything from Iran-Contra drug running up to how these wars were created. Yes, the government was lying about Saddam's nuclear weapons. Yes, we were smuggling weapons to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. She's threatening to literally nuke the entire political establishment if she doesn't get her way. Personally, I hope she does. We're long overdue for, I mean, Washington, D.C. needs an enema badly.
Yeah, and I hope she loses for that reason. But the reason I called is it looks like Christie's bucking for vice president. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he is, and he's drawing a lot of flack for that. But I'll tell you, the smartest thing Donald Trump could do is pick a female vice president, and he will yank the woman's vote right out from underneath Hillary Clinton. Because there are a lot of hardcore feminists who are going to vote for Hillary because she's a woman, but they're not comfortable with it. And if there wasn't, you know, they were going to support Carly Fiorina. But she flamed out because of her job performance when she was in charge of Hewlett-Packard. But if, in fact, Trump could even tap Carly, and that would just that would just pull the rug right out from underneath Hillary.
You know, what I was thinking, though, the neocons are scrambling now to find a vice president they can sneak in and act as a Charlie McCarthy routine, like Cheney did Bush.
Yeah, I mean, but again, they're destroying their own credibility with their own party members. And the Democrats are doing exactly the same thing with the delegates. All of the rank and file American voters are just having they're staring into a party machine that welcomes their money and demands their votes and loyalty, but says, you're too stupid to pick your own government, we will do it for you.
I know it's been there like that for a while, and I'm offended. Anyway, Mike, thanks for everything, and we'll talk to you later.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. Okay, getting on back to the war zones here. Apparently, over in Poland, in their armed forces, there's been a sudden surge of resignations. Nearly all of its most important officers have basically tendered their resignations in the last few days. People are trying to figure out what the heck is going on over there. Now, you know, Poland went through a recent change of government that put it at odds with the European Union, to the point where some of the member states of the European Union were demanding Poland's membership be suspended until Poland got back on board with the agenda. Maybe they're going to gin up a military coup d'etat to get Poland back on board with the New World Order agenda. Now, as you know, David Cameron is absolutely running around proving that he's a tyrant and a dictator with regards to the Brexit. He's literally ordered his own cabinet not to say anything negative about continuing with the European Union. He is literally demanding other world leaders allow him to edit their speeches so that nothing negative about staying in the EU is being said. Now, he went over to Brussels and he crafted this new deal about being in the European Union that was supposed to be sort of a compromise position, came on back, and in a poll of 150,000 British subjects, 129,000 still want Britain out of the European Union. So I can imagine what David Cameron's going to do next. They're going to start taking hostages out of the families, so the British subjects will vote the way the Prime Minister tells them to vote. Very alarming story coming out of FARS News. The U.S. missile defense is now outdated and unable to deal with new challenges. Now, a lot of this is holdovers from Reagan's so-called Star Wars, Strategic Defense Initiative. And they spent a lot of money. They didn't really accomplish a whole heck of a lot, and those things they did build are now basically obsolete and rotted. We got one sitting down here in Pearl Harbor. It's this giant floating X-band radar that they put on top of a repurposed oil drilling platform. They can't get it to work. $10 billion is what they've spent on it. And I'll tell you a big reason why. First of all, we know that the U.S. military-industrial complex is all about money and not about making sure that our children who are sent into combat have real working weapons. But over the last 30 years, having turned our national back on quality manufacturing, the people who know how to make good products have already left to other countries, including the best designers of potential military hardware. Talk about a failure of policy. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I'm looking over at the I Hate Donald Trump TV network, formerly known as Fox News. And they're ramping up the booga booga. They just finished a story about how North Korea could use nuclear weapons at any time. Insert ominous music here. Well, technically that's correct. But so could Russia, so could China, so could France, Britain, Pakistan. Hasn't happened yet. In fact, folks, you need to keep in mind when you're hearing all this screaming about Saddam's nuclear weapons and Iran's nuclear weapons and North Korea's nuclear weapons, that in the entire history of planet Earth, only one country has ever actually used nuclear weapons of mass destruction against the civilians of another nation, and the country that committed that atrocity is the United States of America. But they're out there trying to sell you the need for war. They want to get their war going before Trump gets elected and just spoils it all for everybody. We've worked so hard to get our war. Let's talk about the economy here. Story coming out of Washington's blog. Central bankers are now admitting that the central banks have failed to fix the economy, both here in the United States and in Europe. And, of course, back in 2008, all the way as recently as last year, the central banks were saying, trust us, we're going to make this work, we're going to fix it. You should just go along with what we tell you to do, we will make it all happen. This year, they're basically saying, well, we haven't actually fixed anything. We've paid ourselves huge salaries and bonuses, that's got to count for something, but we had good intentions, and you should just go on trusting your money to us. Even though we're now in the area of negative interest rates and you actually lose money by putting it in your savings account. But you should go on doing that, really. Paper is good. Gold is bad. Speaking of gold, it's now official. Canada has sold all of its gold reserves. This is coming out of ETF Daily News. And Canada has basically done what Great Britain did a few years ago. Dumped all their gold. And Great Britain did it all at once and announced they were going to do it. And it drove gold prices down, which is what they wanted to do. Because had Great Britain just slowly sold their gold over time, they would have gotten a lot more money for it. But getting money for it wasn't the goal. Crushing gold prices is it. And that's why we're seeing all this gold being dumped in an effort to try and glut the market to keep gold prices down so that people don't close their negative interest rate savings accounts or their stock portfolios and go into precious metals. And by the way, there's hardly any ordinary people left in the stock markets. We were reporting earlier this week that virtually all of the activity you're seeing on the U.S. stock markets are corporations buying back their stocks, and they're doing it with borrowed money. I'm going to get back to that in just a little bit. But this idea of dumping gold to keep the gold prices down only works as long as you've got more gold to sell. Canada is now out. Britain is now out. And by the way, Germany never got their gold back from the Bank of England. So what's going on with all of a sudden the stock buybacks with borrowed money? Because if they can't buy the stocks back on profits, they can't pay back the loans. It's making the problem worse. So what are they thinking? Normally, a company buys its own stock back when it's getting ready to enter what it thinks is a hugely profitable phase of their business. That doesn't seem to be the effect. And then it occurred to me what may be going on is a double shuffle regarding those horrible derivatives. And so here's what goes on. You have all this money that you have borrowed or this other financial obligation, and some company has sold derivatives on it. If it goes bust, the derivatives implode. Something like $90 trillion worth exposure here in the United States of America. So what if they're borrowing new money to clear up those old debts covered under the derivatives, but the new borrowed money doesn't have a derivative on it? That's how they're going to try and get out of the mess. $6.4 trillion of global sovereign bonds now have a negative interest rate, negative yield, according to J.P. Morgan. And Saudi Arabia, because of the oil price disaster, is now looking to borrow $10 billion from somewhere else. This is the first international loan they've had to look at in a decade. Here at home, the FDIC's Deposit Insurance Fund available assets cover less than 0.5% of U.S. bank deposits. It doesn't matter what it says on your little deposit slip. Assets insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation up to a level of whatever the current level is. I think it's $100,000. No, it isn't. It may say it. They can't do it. Now, apparently, over in London, visas issued to wealthy foreigners to come and live there have plunged 84%. And those wealthy foreigners were driving the boom in real estate prices in London. They all wanted to live in London. They wanted to be near the financial center. They wanted to, status, prestige address. But now they're all ending their leases or selling their property, and they're heading back home. That seemingly endless flood of foreign money that was propping up London's real estate bubble is drying up, and we may see an implosion there. Now, Disney is flying in cheap foreign workers to replace American workers. Big stink where the American workers are having to train their replacements. IBM is getting ready to release a huge number of people, refuses to say how big it's going to be, other than it's massive. Nabisco workers are very angry because Nabisco is moving their production facilities to Mexico as well. And all of this leads us to this very interesting article in Investment Watch blog. This is all starting to look like the French Revolution, with bankers and CEOs and their favored politicians in the role of Marie Antoinette. And yes, the parallels between the current United States of America and France under Louis XVI are inescapable at this point. Now, getting back to the area of military waste, the U.S. government is spending right now $1.7 billion with a B dollars a year, maintaining 770,000 empty buildings at a time where government agencies are leasing or buying new buildings. And Representative Jeff Denham is saying there is something wrong with that. Why can't we use these 770,000 empty buildings and save the taxpayers money? What do you mean save taxpayers' money? They're supposed to give us the money. That's what the taxpayers are for. If they're not going to give us money, we might as well just, kill them all, grind them up, and use them for fertilizer. We'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about the economy, and one of the ways they're avoiding triggering that Death Star of derivatives hanging over the world's economy is they're simply pretending that nobody is defaulting. We've been hearing Deutsche Bank is in serious trouble, but it keeps on going on. The numbers keep getting worse, but they keep on saying, it's okay, it'll work out. It's not defaulted, but we're not going to allow the derivatives to trigger. And apparently they're doing the same thing here with the U.S. government, because if you actually look at the U.S. government right now and their finances, the U.S. government in Washington, D.C. is broke. They have a negative net worth of $18.2 trillion. There aren't enough Americans, even at a 100% tax rate, to ever clear up that red ink, especially with wages and salaries being driven down, especially with massive unemployment. So I would imagine somewhere in Washington, D.C., somebody saying, we could declare ownership of the American people, and under the mark-to-market accounting method, we'll assign an arbitrary value of $1 million to each living American. And on paper, we'll be looking, well, as good as Enron did right there at the start. They're at the point now where all they've got is tricky bookkeeping and more lies. And when the people stop believing the lies, when the American people stand up with one voice and say, we're just not going to listen to you guys anymore, it's when it starts falling apart. Now, here is a story that really annoys me. It's coming out of Activist Post. Apparently, officials in the Huntsville City Schools are tracking child social media use outside of school. Now, I can understand in a school that, if you're using your social media, the teachers and the administrators have a right to look at it. These people are literally spying on students on the students' own time, at home, out there with their friends, and tracking their social media in order to punish them for inappropriate posts. I'm sorry. When the school bell rings in the morning, teach the kids. When the school bell rings in the afternoon, that's it. You're done. If anybody is going to be monitoring the children, it should be the parents. And again, what is inappropriate or not is subjective. It's not carved in stone anywhere. What offends you may not offend me. It's more of this political correctness, cultural Marxism. Public schools aren't supposed to brainwash and control our kids. I know they do. That's where I got my early brainwashing about what a wonderful country we all live in. If I were a parent and I found out, if I were lucky enough to have a kid, biggest disappointment in my life, and they were in school, and I found out the school was spying on them outside of school hours, I would yank that kid. Private school or home school, but you are not going to get your little liberal dictatorship hands on my kid again. Because I'm going to raise my kid to be a free thinker, to be analytical, to be logical, to not be a slave to imposed beliefs. And yes, that makes me a threat to the current political regime. Anybody who thinks for themselves is a threat to a government that's built on lies, fraud, and illusion, and the slavery of belief systems. Okay, kind of a bizarre story where apparently over in Gardner, Kansas, police responded to a 9/11 call that 54-year-old Deanne Choate had been drinking and was potentially suicidal. When the police arrived, she was asleep in bed and totally naked, and the cops woke her up, demanded to see where she kept her gun. She pointed to where the gun was, and the cops just killed her right on the spot. And here's where it gets weird. Apparently, all the personal body cameras on the police officers had been turned off before it happened. Now, this woman is naked. She's not carrying a concealed weapon. She's complying with the police request to show them where the gun is, and they just killed her. The family's bringing a federal lawsuit. And you know something? These lawsuits are not going to solve the problem, because when police departments get sued successfully, they just raise taxes or raise traffic fines on everybody. They make you pay for their mistakes. In the blueprint for the new America, we're going to go back to the principle that the Supreme Court enshrined in John Badelk versus United States. Police are police only when they're in compliance with the law. And when they're not, they're just like everybody else. And if there's a civil lawsuit, the police officers themselves are personally liable. You take the money from the people who committed the crime. Same thing with that settlement they finally got in Georgia over the flashbang grenade into the baby's crib. Those police aren't going to pay for it. The taxpayers are. Now, apparently, up in Pennsylvania, former police officer Ryan Reese has been charged with multiple crimes. Apparently, he was the chief of a drug task force. And over the years, would trade leniency to female suspects in exchange for sex, including at least one underage girl. And these are the people that we are being told that we should just trust will take care of us. If crime shows up, we should surrender all of our guns and let the police come in and protect us. I don't think so. Now, right now, the average wait time in response to a 911 call to the police is running between 15 and 20 minutes, depending upon where you live in the country. In some parts of the country, if you dial 911 for the police, you get an answering machine. Now, because of the press of the economy, we're going through a crime wave in our neighborhood. We've had 2 cars broken into in the parking lot out front here. Thankfully, I drive this very ancient Honda. Nobody disturbs it. Claire's church has been broken into now at least 3 times. The first time, they took the money for the food program. The second time, they broke into and vandalized an unused office where apparently they had a drug party. And because the graffiti on the wall is changing, they've been back there at least one more time. Cops can't seem to get around to it. I remember when we were trying to get rid of the druggies who were making and selling drugs in both of our neighboring units. Gee, we're sorry. We mean well. We can't do anything. If the Second Amendment grants us a common sense right to keep and bear arms, first and foremost, it's so that we may protect ourselves from crime. Our government has been spending your tax dollars to give military-style assault weapons to Mexican drug criminals. And those guns have come back into the United States of America and been used to commit crimes and murders. But we, the law-abiding American citizens, are not allowed to own those weapons, or at least that's the agenda right now. We can still get them, but the government doesn't want us to have them. The government wants the Mexican drug criminals to have them, but not you, the law-abiding citizen. Whose side is the government on? Is our government, in fact, so criminally compromised, so in league with the drug dealers, that they're helping them out? They're keeping us intentionally disarmed and helpless so criminals can prey on us. Is it really that far-fetched when you look at how tangled up our federal government has been with drug smuggling throughout the decades? Heroin from Vietnam, Iran-Contra cocaine, more opium coming from Afghanistan. You got to realize, again, our government, its behavior is that of an organized crime family. We'll be back after these words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Final segment of our program on this Thursday. Getting on back to law enforcement. This is from Oraz.com, and they're talking about this case where lab technicians were under pressure to support the prosecution. And this is widespread. Remember Frederick Whitehurst? He used to be in charge of the FBI's crime lab. And he blew the whistle that the FBI's crime lab was rigging lab test results to help prosecutors send people to jail. Okay, so over in, let's see, Little Falls, in New Jersey, Kamal Kant Shah worked as a laboratory technician for the State Police Laboratory and was found to have dry labbed suspected marijuana, basically accused of making up data. And because of that, 7,827 criminal cases are now in question. Our society has become so corrupted that even ordinary workers in the police labs are saying, yeah, I'm going to send people to jail. We got to keep those prison companies full. Remember, if we don't give them a certain number of prisoners, they can sue us. Those prison industry companies, those are slave labor camps. When you look at the number of innocent people being railroaded into them, they are no different than the Nazi slave labor camps at Dachau and Auschwitz and the rest. That's what they were, slave labor camps, where people were just grabbed, locked up, and forced to manufacture goods for the Nazi war effort. Coats, boots, things like that, non-munitions. And that's what our country is doing with this prison industrial complex. This is a perfect example. This one lab technician may have sent over 7,000 innocent people to be slave laborers in these prison industrial factories. Tell me, where is it different? So, now if you're living over there in New York, you've got to be getting very, very nervous because of what's going on at Indian Point. And we're seeing this story where they're describing it as uncontrollable radioactive flow from Indian Point continues to contaminate the Hudson River. And